There's no segue here because I was going to try to take your earlier day thing and turn that into a segue into what we're talking about, but it's too late now. So,
well, I can tell you because we're talking about cannaparents, and I can tell you one person that wasn't a cannaparent, and that is Nick Cage in the movie Long Legs. So
I don't understand the reference, so I'll just say, oh, okay.
Yeah, say okay.
We're talking about, we're going to talk about Hot Topic today.
Yeah.
Shocking.
A Hot Topic, not the clothing store at the mall.
Right, yeah. So, anyway, I mean, I don't know how hot it is, but we're about to turn it up. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, if you spend any time online and you're a cannabis consumer, you probably have come across the hashtag cannamom, or you've probably seen some TikTok or type of video with a mom who has freshly gardened. That's the thing now, saying that you just gardened instead of smoking pot, because all the social media overlords don't like that. So you have to get creative, and you have to find people that say that they like to garden, that they're going to play with their kids after they just freshly gardened. And it changes all the time because the algorithms are always changing. So sometimes you might see somebody say they want to spork a spoink or whatever. I don't know. I've seen a lot of different...
Spork a spoink?
Yeah, somebody was saying they're going to sploink a... I'm saying it wrong. They're like, let's go doink a doinker, is what they were saying. That's not sploink or spork, but they were saying like doink a doinker.
Is still...
Yeah. I'm telling you, I've seen so many different versions of it. Gardening, doinker. What was the other one? I'm trying to think. Oh, just broccoli. That was the other one. Broccoli. People smoking broccoli. People using broccoli instead of pictures of cannabis.
Oh, yeah. I do know about that one.
So there's a lot to unpack. In this episode, we're going to unpack a lot. And I just want to say right off the bat, these communities online are not inherently a bad thing. I'm not trying to say that at all. I've found some community through these hashtags, these groups, these online communities, in whatever form they may take. It's great to have community, especially when you're doing something that is widely considered to be outside of the box, something that goes against what society deems to be the way to do things, right? It's good to find those common traits in people. You're like, oh, okay, so maybe you're cool.
Yeah.
But as you and I have become very aware of in the last few years, the fact that someone uses cannabis does not automatically make you, quote unquote, cool. And I'm saying cool by my standards, because you might be cool by someone else's standards. But just because you consume something that I consume does not mean that we see eye to eye on anything, really.
But especially parenting, where it's a lot of times you'll think, especially in the early days with us, we're like, oh, well, they consume to calm down. They're being active in their kid's life. Obviously they hold the same values as us. And there's been times where that has really backfired on us.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've been quoted, okay? Let me just say this. I have been quoted in articles, in books, on other podcasts, telling people about how cannabis makes me a better parent. And a lot of ways it does, okay? I want to make that very clear. Yeah. It helps with my brain elasticity so that I am a little bit more flexible with the way that I think. It helps with my imagination, so I'm able to be a little bit more playful. It helps with my anxiety. I mean, it helps in so many ways. However, it is not the only tool in the tool belt. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of going backwards here, but...
Well, no, because also it depends on why it's being used. If you're using it so that you can kind of alleviate some of that anxiety or some of that pain to make you a better presence in your child's life, then that's amazing, whether it is cannabis or something else. But much like cannabis or something else, if you're using it to kind of pull away, to make yourself disassociate, to become less present, then no matter what you're consuming, whether it is plant derived or not, it's probably not the greatest thing.
Yes, and I see a lot of people posting videos where they're like, look at all the things that I do in a day. And when I say people, it's mostly cannamoms. I don't think I've really seen any canna dad. And obviously there are a lot of reasons for that, because as a society, we tend to disparage mothers more than fathers for so many reasons. Okay, patriarchy is just patriarchy is patriarchying. So people are going to be like, oh, you're not a good mom because you do this, before they'll say, oh, you're not a good dad.
Well, we were all raised watching television shows in which the dad got off of work and went right to the bar, and that became so normalized for us as a society that we just assume like, oh yeah, the dad, they're allowed to go to the bar, they're allowed to overconsume, they're allowed to do this and that. And as a society, we've started kind of gearing away from that, like, hey, maybe that's not such a good idea. It still became so normalized that it becomes a lot more quicker for us to disparage women than it is for us to disparage men for doing the same thing.
Absolutely. And so what I see a lot of are these in defense of type of posts. Like, I understand being defensive. I no one wants to be called a bad parent for any reason. No one enjoys having their parenting put under a microscope. We all are doing our best. And even if other people don't think that that is the case, even if I don't think that is the case for my own parents half the time, they are doing their best with what they think that they have, right? With the tools that they have. That's they're doing their best most of the time. Anyway, I'm just joking. I'm joking. My point is, though, when we do these videos where we show people like, look at all the things I do today. Look at how well I take care of my children. Look at me being a functioning member of society while I also garden. Let me take a hit of my whatever and do the dishes. Let me take a hit of this and do. I understand what you're trying to do with that, but for me, it feels like we're just fueling the fire of the opponents. Because if they sit there and say, well, oh, you're a stoner, you don't care about your kids. Okay.
You can't do anything without consuming first.
Think that then. Yeah. Who cares? But when you bend over backwards to show people, oh, look at what I am not what you think I am, then you're showing that you do care what they think. And not only care, you're giving them more ammunition, because they're like, oh, so they definitely care that I'm calling them this. Let me keep calling them this. And then you're going so far trying to prove them wrong that you wind up ultimately proving them right in some kind of a way, because you're spending so much time and energy trying to prove them wrong that you're not focusing on the thing that you wanted to focus on in the beginning, which is this plant is making your life better. That's all that matters. It's making your life better. That's all that should matter. I mean, obviously, we want the kids to be okay. We want to ask the kids. The kids' opinions matter the most in all of this. But maybe I'm not making the point that I'm trying to make. But I'm saying we want the focus
to be on how the plant is making you better, and how you're able to use that plant to be more present and there for your kids if you do want to become like a cannaparent, and not so much a parody and a new version of the wine mom, where it's becomes like a joke.
Yeah, because, all right, here's my other part of it that gives it a little bit more context. I also see people saying in the same breath of, oh, look at all the things that I'm doing. I wouldn't be doing this if I was a wine mom. I wouldn't be doing this if I was a meth mom or whatever. I don't see meth mom, but I mean...
I don't think anyone's hashtagging meth mom.
Well, that's my point. We don't see people, saying, oh, you're hashtag meth mom, you're hashtag Tylenol mom, you're hashtag homeopathic. Yeah. Who cares? Yeah. Who cares what you're consuming? I mean, I understand that you want to normalize it. I understand that you want to, make people aware of how it is better for you. But when you sit there and say, oh, well, at least I'm not drinking and I'm not doing this, then you're doing the same thing as the people who are calling you a stoner
Yeah.
and saying that you don't care about your kids.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Because, I mean, full transparency, everything dependent on how you take it is going to be beneficial or counterproductive. So it really comes down to a lot of times personal preference of what helps you. And you don't want to get into a situation where you're trying
Pigeonholed
to pigeonholing or trying to spending so much time bringing another group of people down instead of uplifting people that are around you. You know, we need to steer away from this, oh, I'm better by contrast.
Yeah.
You know, instead of just like, we're the best that we can be. And that's all that there really needs to be. You don't need to bring other people down to uplift yourself.
Yeah, it's fine to say, oh, okay, like life is getting to you. Let me give you like, if you're asking what works for me, I'm going to tell you what works for me. Or, you know, having those kind of conversations are productive. Like, let me just give you a little insight as to what I do every day. That's fine. That's cool. That's great. We want that, right?
Yeah.
But when you're sitting there and attacking the very people that are attacking you, then you're doing exactly what they want you to do. Like, that is exactly playing into the hands of the people that are opponents. But also, it's alienating people, because if someone is a wine mom or a soccer mom or whatever they identify as, personally, I wish we could just get rid of all of these monikers.
Just be mom.
And just be caretakers and parents, you know? I mean, why does it have to be this mom, you know, hashtag blah, blah, blah mom, hashtag blah, blah, blah dad? Like, people wonder why there's such a divide in the comparisons of parents. And it's because we're like, well, the dad does this and the mom does this. And we're upholding these binaries that are just oppressive.
And it's the same putting people in the shelves like they used to. I mean, just growing up, you were, you know, a metalhead or whatnot, you know, in high school, or a preppy or a jock.
Yeah, you
know,
just like good music.
Yeah, and then when we grew up, it's like we enjoyed being pigeonholed so much that we're like, oh, I want to put a moniker next to what kind of parent I am. You know, it's instead of just I'm a parent just trying to do my best.
And it does pigeonhole you in so many ways. So I'm going to get to the actual the usage parts in a minute, because that's the way people use it is another thing altogether. But there are people who say, oh, plants over pills, plants over wine. And then a little further down the line, they start saying, well, actually, I do enjoy wine sometimes. And you know what? And me, I'm one of the pills people, because I started off going, yeah, plants over pills, woo. But then I was like, wait a minute. A lot of my plants come in pill form.
Yeah.
And not only that, there are times when I need pharmaceuticals to stay alive. So I'm not going to say plants over pills definitely.
No. And this is the merging, like there's this weird rift where it became like Eastern medicine versus Western medicine, when really we just need to kind of bring the two together. I mean,
our system
generally
is so
speaking,
broken.
Yeah, and we are over medicated through Western medication. But in the same vein, if we were only strictly to rely on homeopathic remedies, we would then be under-medicated. There are certain things that Western medicine has been able to eradicate that homeopathic medicine has not been able to. And we need those things. So it's not necessarily, it shouldn't be like I'm this versus this. It should be like I am gathering all the knowledge I have on all the ways to benefit, to make me feel better, and I'm going to use them appropriately for what they are designed and needed for. I'm not going to use wine to help me with my depression. I might have to use a pharmaceutical for that, but I'm also not going to use antibiotics nonstop, which is just going to cause me to have a reliance on antibiotics in the future, when I could be using more of a homeopathic remedy. CBD to help remedy, or cannamom.
Yeah,
Cannamom does
really
amazing
great.
things for when you're sick. It's really rich in antioxidants. Same with kava. You know, cannamom actually has more antioxidants than green tea. It can be very beneficial for you when you're sick.
Wow.
And it keeps you from, relying on antibiotics, which a lot of times are prescribed just so that patients leave the doctor alone, because they'll have a viral infection and be given an antibiotic. I've seen it countless times.
In your experience as a medical professional.
Exactly. So, this is something that does happen, and then all that does is builds up a resilience against antibiotics, so they're not beneficial for you in the future when you do actually need them. So instead of us thinking, oh, it's Eastern medicine versus Western medicine, we need to look at it as in these are all medicines. Let me take the appropriate one for what I need it for right then and there, instead of thinking, oh, I'm better than the person that's taking this or I'm better than the person that's taking that. Let's get rid of this competition and just make it of let's all just try to heal and become a better society and a better people,
Yeah.
and take what we have, and we're lucky to live in a time to have, for the appropriate reason.
And I just want to reiterate, we find value in people sharing their stories about usage and how it helped them, because, I mean, that's the whole reason why we started this podcast and our other one, Getting Personal with Plant Medicine. You know, we know there's value in sharing stories and finding community, and that is not what we're saying. Like, I want to make it clear that I think that is very important. However, also within the community online, and you get a little bit more insular, and insular, is that the word I'm looking for? When you get more terminally online, as they say, and you're going in and having conversations with other people who call themselves cannamoms or cannaparents or whatever, then we start getting into, well, you're not that great of a parent, though, because you consume around your kids. Or you're not that great of an advocate because you don't consume in front of your kids. Or you get the people who are like, oh, you're smoking flower and not using vapes, or you're using vapes, that's garbage. Or you're using hemp derived anything. What are you talking about? It can't just be, hey, we want access to the plants. We want access to the plant that is just a plant. And we want it to be however you want it to be. Like, that's the whole point. Whatever way you want to consume it, in whichever form you want to consume it, should be really the concentration in these groups when we're finding community. Not shaming other people because they don't do what you think they should be doing.
Yeah. I mean, we went so long with just hoping that we could build a community in something like cannabis outwardly, and have it not be like a secret that you just talk about when you're in your house. And we had that for all of maybe 3 years before infighting started happening, where those communities that we long waited for started turning on each other. And, now we have this section that thinks that they're better than this section of people, and this section of people that are better than this section of people, not remembering that 10 years ago, none of these conversations would even be able to happen, out in the open. And, this constant turning against each other just so that you can feel kind of superior in any kind of way, instead of yet again uplifting to continue this movement. We're not still fully federally legal. I don't ever think it will happen personally, but
in our lifetime.
Yeah, in our lifetime, but it's still not there. So there's still more things to fight for the access for everybody, which is so much more important than trying to make yourself feel better than someone else who is literally just trying to get by. I tell this to my team all the time. Most people wake up in the day and they're not thinking, oh, how can I bring this person down or bring this person down? Most people just wake up in the day and they spend their days just trying to get through it, trying to do their best, trying to better themselves and be the best that they can and just get through the day. Life is exhausting. Life is hard, and they're just trying to get through it. So when we have an opportunity to actually come together about something that we see beneficial, and then you watch that same thing within a few years turn to something that's toxic, where people are just fighting each other due to superiority feelings, then it can become it's not constructive. Exactly. And it makes you want to stop fighting for the things that should be fought for.
Yeah, because my whole thing, just bringing it back to the reason why people do these videos and things like that and saying that they want it for normalization. Well, if that's the case, then you want people who have no idea about cannabis, or who even just shut it down in their brains because of whatever they believe, You want them to come over to your side, correct? That's what I hear all the time. Well, if that's the case, I can guarantee you that the fastest way to turn them off is to start talking about things like, "Oh, it's actually called cultivars, strains instead of strains, or terpenes." Because I know this because I have done that, and I have spoken to people who are not in the online community and have no idea what I'm talking about. Even people who work in the cannabis industry talking about these fights that happen, and they don't know what I'm talking about. So it's very strange. It's a strange dichotomy, but it's also something that we need to talk about, because as more states come online, as more people are starting to become accepting of it, we need to have a more cohesive community out,
And it's an accessibility of knowledge. Our first 3 seasons of this show, almost every interview we did, that person said, "I actually didn't try cannabis until a lot later in life because I grew up in the dare generation." I edited that sentence so many times
We should
in
make a
so many
mixtape.
episodes. For real. But that is the truth beyond where we're coming from. And those people still very actively exist. Just because a handful of them came on it doesn't mean that people still aren't afraid or stigmatizing the industry because they grew up during the dare generation of the 80s and the 90s. So we need to make this knowledge accessible, and also meet them where they are. And coming at them with exact scientific terms and stuff like that and trying to showboat your knowledge isn't going to get them to calm down and relax about
criticizing the way they consume.
exactly,
Like, oh, you're using
making fun
that.
of what they are already taking at the time. We're not building any bridges. We're walling ourselves off and acting like we're better than everyone else when that's not the case at all. So it's something that we really need to break down in our own communities to welcome other people in, because our community does need to grow. We are not this great community that's high standing. We need it to grow, and we need to get people in it that are like-minded to help it grow, to steer it back into a positive direction, because it's not going in that way. And without bringing people in, we're never going to get that way, and we're not going to bring people in by making fun of how they themselves are just trying to get through the day. Instead of shaming them, how about you educate them on what cannabis and CBD can do?
Or find out why they're using the thing that you think is so gross. Or,
exactly.
There's a reason. People aren't just out there throwing whatever they can at the wall to see what sticks all the time.
Yeah. And it turns into we don't want to be like this. We're too cool for school situation. When I was in when we were in South Florida, there was a lot of kava bars that were around. Some of the kava bars would hire people that had this chip on their shoulder, that they thought that they were better than everyone else because they were working at a kava bar. They would dictate who would come into their kava bar and who couldn't. It was very toxic, and it really stunted the growth of the community. And we don't want to be that. We don't want to be too cool for school. It's like, oh, I'm the gatekeeper of this information. I'm going to tell you what it's called. I'm going to tell you how you're doing. I'm going to say whether or not you're allowed to consume it this way or that way. We need to stop, because it is keeping the community from growing, and it's not going to be good.
We're not going towards normalization.
No.
We're not in that direction, I feel.
At all.
There's a lot more to say about it, but we'll keep that for another episode. But anyway, until next time, stay high and beautiful.
I don't have a sign-off.
This podcast has been a product of Your Highness Media. Each episode is written, produced, and edited by Your Highness Media. Thank you for listening.